Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the rapid rise and the, frankly, extreme contradictions of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. You probably know him as MBS, right? Let's just get into it. We are looking at a guy who basically reshaped one of the most powerful, traditionally conservative nations on Earth in just a handful of years. Today, we're going to map out his journey, contrasting the glittering public relations campaigns with the much darker, hidden realities of his rule that have been documented by journalists, intelligence agencies, and human rights groups.
So here's the central mystery we really need to unpack today. Is MBS this visionary reformer who totally mesmerized the West, or is he a tyrant who ruthlessly crushes any sign of dissent? When he first hit the global stage, people were raving about him coast to coast. He was young, dynamic, and saying absolutely all the right things to Western audiences. But as we're going to see, there was a much more complex, much more aggressive leadership style brewing just under the surface.
To really get him, you have to look at the two totally different faces he shows the world. On the one hand, you've got the mesmerizing reformer. This is the MBS who toured the U.S., rubbing elbows with 4 different presidents, countless moguls, Wall Street titans, and tech executives in Silicon Valley. They saw this incredibly pro-Western, pro-technology innovator. But then, flip the coin, and you have the absolute ruler. This is the leader who at home and in his own region demands absolute total capitulation. He uses some seriously coercive power against anyone he perceives as a domestic or regional enemy.
And his rise to power was incredibly fast. Within just a few short years, MBS basically shattered decades of Saudi royal tradition to grab absolute control. Just look at the speed of this consolidation. In 2015, at only 29 years old, he becomes Minister of Defense and boom, immediately launches a massive, aggressive war in neighboring Yemen. Fast forward to June 2017, he outmaneuvers his chief rival, the sitting crown prince Mohammed bin Nayef, essentially putting him under house arrest to take the title for himself. Then, just months later, he launches the unprecedented Ritz-Carlton Purge. Literally overnight, the whole ball of wax was in one man's hands.
Now, to pull all this off, he needed international backing, right? And what's wild about this massive $100 billion figure is just how perfectly he wooed the West to secure his position. During a highly orchestrated trip to Riyadh in 2017, he locked in this massive $100 billion arms deal with the Trump administration. He knew exactly how to play to Western interests. He's out there hyping his sweeping economic plan, Vision 2030, and promising to take the giant state oil companies Saudi Aramco public. It was an absolute masterclass in PR that completely solidified his international backing.
And that PR masterclass extended to his public face at home too, through these historic social reforms. He completely defanged the notoriously strict religious police so they couldn't just arrest people for alleged public morality stuff anymore. He lifted a decades-old ban on cinemas, planning to open something like 350 movie theaters across the kingdom. He started moving the economy away from its heavy reliance on oil revenues, and, of course the big one, he finally lifted the ban on women driving. These were revolutionary moves that honestly dazzled global audiences. People really thought, wow, a new, liberalized Saudi Arabia is finally here.
But here's where that stark contrast hits you. While he's getting standing ovations around the world for letting women drive, human rights groups were reporting something entirely different. The very activists who actually championed the cause, people like Lujain al-Haflul, were simultaneously being swept up and thrown in prison. And we're not just talking a brief lockup. Reports from sources and family members detailed horrifying treatment, solitary confinement, beatings, electrocution, and sexual assault. The message she was sending was crystal clear. Reforms come strictly as a gift from the Crown Prince, not as a right that the people get to demand.
The crackdown on any kind of dissent was absolute. Take a look at this chilling warning given to a moderate cleric named Salman al-Adha right before his arrest. Neutrality in this crisis is treason. So what was his huge crime? Well, during Saudi Arabia's aggressive political blockade of Qatar, al-Adha literally just tweeted a prayer hoping the two leaders could reconcile. That's it, a prayer for peace. And for that, he was arrested, mistreated in prison, and the state actually sought the death penalty against him. For MBS, even just being neutral was seen as a direct threat to his absolute authority.
You see, the crucial takeaway here is that MBS demanded total submission from absolutely every layer of society. Let's revisit that November 2017 purge I mentioned earlier. He basically turned Riyadh's ultra-luxury Ritz-Carlton hotel into a gold-plated prison. He locked up 200 of the kingdom's wealthiest citizens. We're talking powerful rival princes, government ministers, top businessmen. He called it a sweeping anti-corruption campaign. But behind closed doors, detainees were interrogated, with reports of physical abuse leaking out, and they were forced to literally sign over billions of dollars of their personal fortunes just to buy their freedom.
So he's controlling the elites, but what about the narrative at home? Well, for that, the regime turned to the digital world, creating what became known as an army of flies. Saudi Arabia actually has a huge Twitter user base, and it used to be seen as a somewhat open forum. But MBS, utilizing a close aide named Saud al-Qahtani, deployed this army of flies, which is a massive, coordinated network of bots and fake accounts. They artificially pumped up pro-MBS sentiment, manipulated hashtags, and viciously swarmed, harassed, and intimidated any critic who dared to step out of line online.
But if you were a high-level dissident, a bunch of Twitter bots was the least of your worries. The state went way further. They reportedly started using advanced, military-grade spyware like the NSO Group's Pegasus software. Now, this tech is genuinely terrifying. It can secretly infect the smartphones of activists living in exile on the other side of the world, remotely turning on their microphones and cameras and breaking their encrypted messages. When a government has essentially unlimited resources to spend, its critics literally have nowhere to hide.
Which brings us to a really pivotal figure in all of this, Jamal Khashoggi. Now, Khashoggi wasn't some lifelong outsider. He was the ultimate Saudi insider. He was a journalist who actually supported MBS and his Vision 2030 at the beginning. But the Ritz-Carlton shakedowns and the arrests of all those moderate voices genuinely terrified him. Feeling completely muzzled in his own country, he moved to the United States and started writing critical columns for the Washington Post. He argued quite powerfully that repression and intimidation are not, and never should be, the acceptable companions of reform.
So let's trace what happened next, because it sparked a massive geopolitical true crime mystery. On October 2, 2018, just after 1 p.m., Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. He just needed to pick up some simple paperwork to marry his fiancée. He walked in, and he never walked out. When he failed to emerge that afternoon, alarm bells started ringing. But get this, by October 6th, the Saudi consul general was actually giving reporters tours of the consulate, opening cupboards, and falsely claiming Khashoggi had just safely left the building on his own.
But Turkish intelligence was already piecing together the horrifying reality, and it all revolves around a specific number, 15. A 15-man Saudi hit squad had flown into Istanbul on private jets for the sole purpose of intercepting him. This wasn't some random crew either. It included a forensics and autopsy expert, men who reported directly to MBS's top aide, Saud al-Qahtani. It even included Maher Mutrab, a guy who is constantly seen traveling the globe as part of the Crown Prince's own personal security detail.
What followed was described as one of the worst, most chaotic cover-ups in history. Initially, it was just total, outright denial. They even had a guy dress up as a body double in Khashoggi's clothes and walk out the back door. The only problem? Turkish police instantly noticed the body double was wearing the wrong shoes. Oops. Then, when Turkey obtained audio recordings proving Khashoggi was murdered and dismembered inside the building, the Saudi government finally admitted he was killed. But they quickly pivoted, claiming it was just a botched, rogue operation that the Crown Prince knew absolutely nothing about.
Well, despite the Saudi leadership insisting it was just a rogue element, Western intelligence saw it very differently. The CIA dug into the intelligence, scrubbing through past intercepted communications and looking at text messages between MBS and his aides expressing a desire to silence Khashoggi. After putting the puzzle together, they came to a stark conclusion. The Crown Prince himself ordered the hit. So how did MBS respond when reporters confronted him directly about his role in the murder? He maintained his innocence regarding a direct order, but he did try to claim a sort of broad responsibility simply as the nation's leader. He argued, "It happened under my watch, I get all the responsibility." But then he immediately deflected, arguing that he oversees 3 million government employees and can't possibly micromanage them all, famously stating, "I am not Google or a supercomputer to watch over 3 million. All of this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to chew on. Today, the music is pumping at massive new concerts in Riyadh, the cinemas are packed, and that Vision 2030 plan is pushing forward, bringing undeniable economic and social changes to the kingdom. But as the world watches this huge transformation unfold, we have to ask ourselves, can a thriving, truly modernized society actually exist and succeed when it is built under the absolute iron grip of one man and the constant, lingering shadow of repression? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this wildly complex topic. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.